Can folks take a moment and try your mics just to make sure they're working? Let's see if we can get them to work and then turn
Testing.
off.
Oh,
Testing, testing.
Testing.
Testing. Hello. All right. Testing, testing. One,
Hello.
2, 3. There we go.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Landsman. I'm going to bring our meeting to order. I'm our board chair, at least from the through part of this meeting tonight, as it's our annual officers vote as one of the action items. So I'm going to follow our usual schedule, which is first item is to call the order or call the meeting to order. Second is the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'll stand and do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Next, we'll do roll call.
Mr. Young?
Here.
Mr. Furman?
Present?
Mr. Collins? Mr. Torres? Pastor Jones? Dr. Hans? Here. Ms. Newman?
Present.
Ms. Root? Here. Ms. May? Here. Ms. Woodruff?
Present.
Dr. Giles?
Present.
Mr. Lansman?
Present. Thank you. Next up is a motion to approve the board meeting agenda, and I would like to, before there's a motion made, ask if anyone would consider that we move item 6B from our finance agenda, the finance update, because we have Rich Carpenter, who's, a guest tonight that's going to present, but he's 2 hours out. He lives on the other side of Jackson. So I was wondering if we could move that item number 6B to following item 3, which is the CEO contract.
so moved. Second.
Okay, now I would like, if that's all right, I would like to have someone make the motion to approve our agenda as modified.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone tonight in the audience that would like to make public comment? We have a standing policy of a 3-minute period. There are some folks that, please come on up to the mic. Hit the button in front. It may take a couple of swings.
Hello.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Lynn McGinnity. I'm the Executive Director at New Gateways, a skill-building program with over 100 adults with IDD. I'm also the chair for the Oakland County Provider Alliance, which includes 36 residential and vocational providers in the county. Together, we serve nearly 2,000 individuals with IDD and employ hundreds of DSPs. I have 2 concerns to bring to your attention for immediate action this evening. First and foremost, I urge you to reinstate the dollar wage for the Oakland County DSPs. Excuse me. While providers and DSPs are thankful for the support OCHN has provided for the past 3 years, we were shocked to see OCHN take the stance that you did. Our DSPs have advocated tirelessly for fair wages. It's a known fact that Oakland County has the highest cost of living in the state. The average housing wage for rent is $23 an hour in Oakland County. Our DSPs continue to struggle, even at $16 an hour. They advocated hard for the additional 85-cent wage increase and have been looking forward to it. These are the same caregivers that worked through the entire pandemic and continue to work long hours and multiple jobs to survive. They care for the most vulnerable of citizens. Please seek alternative solutions and stop balancing your budget on the backs of our DSPs. Secondly, I urge you to address the vocational rates or reinstate stability payments for vocational providers. Myself, along with a handful of other vocational providers, have worked with OCHN staff for several months now to review the outdated rate methodology. OCHN staff recognized that their rates, or your rates, were outdated and not sustainable for providers. Together, we developed a new rate structure, and we're making great progress and strides until OCHN abruptly announced that their rates would roll over for the new fiscal year and no changes would be made until more data could be reviewed. While this data is being reviewed, your providers are expected to operate on rates that your staff have recognized as unsustainable. It only makes sense to reinstate the stabilization process to protect services in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on this list, it's Salim Karim. Please.
Hello. Hi, I'm Salim Karim. I'm a program supervisor for New Gateways. The people we serve have severe developmental disabilities. We can all agree that no one in Oakland County needs your support more than people like them. And yet, their DSP's wage did not change despite their elected representatives mandating an 85-cent increase. This does the opposite of helping the people we serve. There's also the need for sufficient cost reimbursement for day programs. Without that, many of them will certainly close down. We know that day programs allow the people we serve to live much healthier and happier lives. We also know that it is common for group homes and guardians to rely on the support of day programs. You have a $15 million surplus, and I understand the need to save money to be prepared for serious problems, but by needlessly allowing many day programs to shut down, you're causing serious problems. The quality of life of the people who lose their day program will be devastated. The guardians who are already desperate for support will be even more desperate. Group homes are understaffed already, and that will only get worse from the need to have staff 24/7. With a $15 million surplus, allowing all of this to happen would be inexcusable. The people we serve at New Gateways and others like them are at a disadvantage compared to your other adult constituents. They cannot advocate alone, but please imagine if they could. They would be here advocating for the 85-cent wage increase and the cost reimbursement for day programs. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I see Zach Cardwell? Zach.
Good evening. Thanks for the chance to talk to you all again. I'm going to reiterate the same thing you guys have just heard multiple times and from my testimony last week. Cost reimbursement, I'm just confused, and maybe I'm missing the plot somewhere, but why end that before rates have been sorted? It just doesn't make any sense. And programs and providers will be put at risk. People that we serve are put at risk because of it. Not just one, not just places like New Gateways because we happen to show up, which I do want to point out. I'm happy that Lynn's here speaking on behalf of the OPA because we do have a very strong OPA provider network, and I think that's due in large part to OCHN's involvement over the past handful of years, which was not there when I was a DSP working in the system for the first time. We didn't have a great relationship, but one of the things that always stood out to me was, I remember Jeff Brown. I was a DSP working at New Gateways, and it's fresh to the field. Jeff Brown came in, and he made the connection with our DSPs. Dana, you've done the same thing. I applaud you, and I applaud OCHN for proving that you've been an ally through the pandemic, where essentially we have heroes in these group homes and day placements and provider networks. You've done all the things to prove you're an ally, and we've taught the DSPs throughout these different programs and providers, it's important to advocate for your wages. I can do it all day long in the same way that when I talk to parents groups, I don't have a son or daughter in the system. I just care about people in the system. It's a different message coming from DSPs. They've done so good to hone this skill throughout the pandemic, to follow legislation, to follow OCHN's businesses, to come to board meetings. Salim was a DSP, still you're providing support. It's incredibly important that people are paying attention, and they are. And we had this great opportunity to stand with them continuously, and we've let them down. I'm asking that OCHN please reinstate the $1 wage along with the 85-cent pass-through mandated by MDHHS and continue to be an ally for the DSPs in Oakland County, providing supports to the most vulnerable individuals that we serve. Two other things I want to quickly mention, the rate thing we talked about, but I wanted to really point out, Mr. Torres and Ms. Root, thank you. Your comments at the end of the COW meeting were really important, stating that you recognize what you're hearing and you want to see this on the agenda. And again, in case I've missed the plot, I don't see it on the agenda again. So I think that's just an important point to make. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. I understand we have folks remote that would like to make comment. Could you facilitate the list one at a time? Thank you.
Matt, are you still online?
Yes, I am. Thank you for your time. My name is Matthew Fritzen. I am a peer mentor, and I am the chair of the CAC. And at this time, I have a letter that I would like to read to you from the CAC. Where it is the policy of Oakland County Health Network to develop a responsive public mental health system of all the individuals, family, along with advocates with the community, stakeholders, past partners, and improved program enhancing supports. It is the purpose of Oakland County Citizen Advisory Committee, the CAC, to provide advice and recommendations to the Oakland County Board, OCHN executive directors, and OCHN staff members, and at regular scheduled meetings, the OCHN CAC on Wednesday, August 16th, 2023, the OCHN board directors adopted without OCHN, CAC input Oakland Community Mental Health Public Policy and the new adoption of the Oakland County Community Mental Health Public Policy under the heading of Public Procedure sets the public comment time limit allowed for each person making a public comment to 3 minutes, which had previously been 5 minutes. The OCH and CAC board members discussed as a majority vote feel that 3 minutes is just not enough time to allow all people to make comments in the environment that they hold integrity to for OCHN mission and vision of the value statement. Now, therefore, be it that the new adopted Oakland County Community Mental Health Public Comment Policy, at present, the OCHN, under the Public Comment Policy Procedure section, shall be amended to reflect the prior public comment time allowed for each person making public comment to OCHN board members to 5 minutes and further resolve. This amendment in section that the amendment section shall read each person should allow 5 minutes to share their statements at times designated to on the application of the board meetings. And the reason I really feel that this is important is myself, I have a developmental disability. I work with people with developmental disabilities as a peer mentor, and it's just really 3 minutes is for some of us, it's just not enough time to get our thoughts across and be able to give you guys valuable input. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Is there another person that wants to make public comment?
There is no other person, but
Okay.
does anyone else want to speak?
How about back in the building here? Is there anyone else? Please come on up.
Good evening. My name is Anne Marie Otoy, and I am Executive Assistant at Dutton Farm. I would like to go on record in support of Lynn McGinnity's comments this evening in regards to the rates for the providers as well as the wage increase for the DSPs. I personally have been involved in the system as a parent of a child with disabilities for about 24 years now, and I have been watched DSPs come into my home and provide services for my son. He is currently placed in a group home, and I have watched services being provided to him in the group home throughout the pandemic. And I also have been working with providers in the provider network for about 12 years, and I have witnessed the work that the DSPs do every single day and the care with which they perform their duties. It's a hard job. It's a hard job being a caregiver. I did it for a long time, for 19 years before I made the decision to place my son in a group home. And I have great respect for the work that they do every day because it does wear on you, even though it's done with great love and care and attention to detail. It's hard. They deserve the recognition, they deserve the wages, and the providers deserve to be able to run an organization that provides these extended services in a meaningful and integrated and compassionate, there's other words that are failing me, but you get the idea, I think. So I just wanted to go on record as personally supporting it, as well as a representative of Dutton Farm here this evening in support of everything outlined by the wonderful individuals who spoke prior to me. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And just to point out, we do have a standing policy, but we welcome public comment. We have the public comment twice during each meeting, beginning and at the end of our meeting, and we welcome it. We need it. We need that input back from the public. So thank you all for stepping up and letting us know how you feel.
There's one more online.
Then let's do it.
All right, Suzanne?
Yes, hello. My name is Susie Gavin, and I am a parent of a 39-year-old special needs son who has attended New Gateways for over 10 years. My husband and I love our son deeply, but our respite, if you will, and the experience that our son receives from New Gateways is wonderful. Lynn, the staff, Zach, Celine, many others have given their life sacrifice. So again, I'm reiterating the comments that have been made earlier. Very concerned that the dollar that was given in 2021 was taken back, and giving the 85 cents plus the 15 cents, I just don't believe is enough. The caregivers give their lives for our children. My son has many health issues. He's was severely sick last year in the ICU, and Lynn and the entire program has helped to ensure his safety and well-being. We are very active in New Gateways, both emotionally, physically, and financially, but our caregivers need the money, need a cost of living increase so that they can maintain. All of us know with the current economy and the economic state, we see the people fighting on strike with the UAW and everywhere. They just can't sustain themselves. So again, I would respectfully ask you to take a look at your budget and see if there is any way that you could think about reinstating payment and helping them. Again, my husband and I are both getting a little bit older. We do not want to put our son in a group home, and New Gateways affords us a chance, possibly saving the state money by not having him in a group home. But that is our only chance for him to also be with other people and live a life that's fair and just. So I thank you for your time, and I appreciate all that you're doing to help us. And I thank everyone at New Gateways.
All right, thank you so much. Next on our agenda is Stories That Inspire. Tonight we have Ben Rappeljay. I actually know Ben indirectly. I know his grandparents, Joyce and Jim Rappeljay. We sailed, so it's great to have you here tonight, Jim. I'm sorry. It's great to have you here tonight, Ben, and Benjamin, I'm sure you'll mention.
Good evening. I'm Vicki Suter, the Director of Rights and Advocacy. Since the 1980s, October has been designated as Down Syndrome Awareness Month. And that gives us an opportunity to celebrate persons with Down syndrome and make others aware and educate us all about the abilities, skills, accomplishments, the things that persons enjoy, the goals that they have, just like all the rest of us do. So with that, I have Lori Lindstrom from Community Living Services, who will introduce our speaker tonight.
Hi, everyone. Lori Lindstrom from Community Living Services, and Ben Rappeljay is with us, and he's going to share with us his story of his best life.
Hi, all. I'm Ben Rappeljay. I am age 26 years old. I live with Township in a house with my mom and my stepdad. And I have a brother and a older sister. Oh, I'm talking about my school. Oh, I graduated in Amel High School in 2015, and I competed at law school in Taiwan. I went to school until I was 12 years old. I loved school before I was 26 because I got a job. I take online classes as the authority of classes of 2 years. I'm still my hobbies with you. I love going to bowling, fishing, music, movies, shopping, backward and traveling. And I love go out to eat and with my mom, my stepdad, and I love to try new foods. I am a athlete with for the Olympics for basketball, for hockey and track. I have 6 good miles of, from one track. All time favorite in the movie is kayak. I do a lot of activities is with every week. Moving that out, Kansas is just Kansas. Here's my stop horse. Here's my stands, my bus stand. Here's my cool rig. I swim with dolphins. And here's my new bike. And here's my group. I was to put it all from Stein Palm. I'm showing you of my job. I walk my pancakes to Thornton Farm. I have employed in field stands about 20 feet. I use work at Lava Mountain Coffee Stop for 2 wheels. I walk 2 days a week and 2 hours steps. I am in charge of making in and skunking kickboxes at the store. I have a job coach named Don. He helps me in take kicks, back actions, walk, and must stop talking. I'm talking about on me and my top coach on odds. I have been with CLS since 2015 and when I turned 18. And I met to as I know right away. See, he was the one for me. I had on my community called House OS. And in 2015, in Howell helps me work on my community goals. That goals is stopping, getting my haircut, safety causing the state, and how to spend my studying in, and I have spent in the weekends at our house to help work on my living independent skills. I'm talking about my studio plans and in the future. My studio plans include gain more independent skills by moving in out with a roommate and in the fall of 2025. I'm working in a control with other housing solutions and also I have a plan to live with 5 times and myself. I would like to date more and get married, and when I married the right girl. Thank you, Stern, in my staff and my family with me. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from? Oh. No, Ben, there's more. Are there any board members that have questions or comments for Ben? Yes, okay.
Not a question, just a comment. You did an excellent job today. You look really sharp. I love that tie. And you keep on keeping on, because you're going to meet that right girl and get married one day.
Yes, ma'am.
Other board members? Well, Ben, like I said, I've known you a long time. Indirectly, I've seen you at our club, I've seen you sail, and I know how much you like it, even though it's not on this list. It's my favorite sport, but I know it doesn't have to be your favorite sport. But it's good to see you, and it's good to see you growing up so well. So thank you.
Oh, welcome.
We, we got very excited. We just had to go back to the CFO introduction. We got very excited for Ben, so we just did that.
Well, why don't we do that right now? Let's do the introduction for our CFO.
Good evening, everybody. I'm happy to welcome Ms. Cheryl Johnson. She's our new CFO. She's been with us for about, 2 weeks now? A little over 3 weeks. And I'm not sure if you want her to come up and say a few words and introduce us, but introduce herself. But please join me in welcoming Ms. Cheryl Johnson.
Hello, everyone. I think I have met most of you. I'd just like to say I'm very, very happy to be here. Have lots of years of experience in accounting and finance, and I'm looking forward to bringing it here and helping out in any way that I can. Thank you.
Any questions for the board or from the board? All right. Well, we welcome you. We're glad to have a CFO on board again. Help us keep our focus and financially. So thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is our CEO contract for approval. For the board members that were at the committee of the whole meeting, we did report out on it. In fact, our treasurer reported out on the contract. And as an executive board, we voted to recommend it to the whole board. Hold on. Sorry about that. So if there's, Dennis, if you'd like to take this and present it, at least briefly, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you. Our CEO has been with us for 3 years. That term was up in August, and it was the desire of the board to move forward into the future with Dana. We have worked very hard in the negotiations, which were very amicable, with Dana and her counsel, along with our counsel, Brent Gelboard, who we're very grateful to. And the executive committee did come up with a 5-year contract. It does have a termination clause in it. So it's something that's very customary in this type of CEO kind of contract. It doesn't have a pay raise that comes by virtue of entering into this contract. We already went through our evaluation process earlier this year. And it's, I think, a contract that we're happy with. I hope Dana's happy with, and we look forward to her leadership. Most importantly, it's a piece of contract's a piece of paper, but from the time I've spent with Dana, she's a person of her word. I think she works very hard. I think a good team has been developed here, and we look forward to you and your team taking us and the 23,000 people we serve into the future and hopefully a bright future. So with that, I'm going to move on the recommendation of our executive committee to approve our CEO contract.
Support.
Thank you. So it's been moved, it's seconded. Is there any discussion by anyone on the board? Yes, Mr. Torres.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments with regard to the contract. So I was part of the executive team that worked with the attorneys to negotiate this, and as Dennis said, there was a lot of back and forth, there was a lot of time spent on this. You know, in anything, it's a back and forth. There's some things in the contract that, you know, I wasn't fully on board with, but there was a bargain and a compromise here. We have the bonus schedule, which I believed was too high, but in what's different in this contract is there was no actual increase to the base salary, so the salary coming into the contract is the same. There was no increase there. And then the annual increase that the CEO would get in line with what other employees would get annually is no longer there. We have the 5-year contract. I was not in favor of that. I was more in line with a 3-year, but we did add a mid-year evaluation with the executive committee into this contract as well, which I guess was a compromise back and forth, just so we can get ahead of things and keep an eye, which is good, I think, for all sides. Just like in anything, it's a compromise. I wasn't completely everything that I was pushing for in this contract, but I am supporting it and supporting our board's or our committee's recommendation of it today. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Ms. Rudin.
I am going to vote yes tonight, but I did want to make this comment and share that I had tried to research CEO contracts for other PIHPs in Michigan because I just kind of wanted to see how it compared, and I could not find them. In my opinion, I feel like it's strange that for the past 3 years I've been on the board, I hear a comment from at least one board member about how this chart is set up for the awards, and it's not a great charter. It's not set up in a great way. So I don't understand why we continue to stay with it and don't change it. And I do want to make a comment that it feels a little bit unethical to me to support, you know, up to a 15% bonus when we have a deficit in our funding and we're hearing public comment about people who can barely make a living wage. So those are just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Other board members' comments? Hearing none, let's do a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Torres?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Hans?
Yes.
Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Ms. Root?
Yes.
Ms. May?
Yes.
Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Mr. Lansman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. So it's approved. Congratulations. For 5 years, keep going, and we wish you well. Okay. Next item on the agenda, with it being revised, is our financial update from Rich Carpenter from the Ryman Group. So please come on up.
Good evening. So I'm going to give you a little bit of an unusual financial update. Dana has asked me to come and talk to you a little bit about kind of the PIHP system as a whole. Oh, go ahead.
Rich, can you tell us a little bit about who you are first, what
Absolutely.
you represent? Thank you for some context.
Absolutely. My name is Richard Carpenter. I'm a principal at Raymond. Raymond is a CPA firm in the state of Michigan. We contract with a lot of the PIHPs and CMHSPs across the state of Michigan. So I currently have contracts with Detroit Wayne, of course, with yourselves here at Oakland. I hold the CFO position at Macomb County Community Mental Health. I hold the CFO position at Region 10, which is the PIHP that oversees Genesee County, St. Clair County, Lapeer County, and Sanilac counties. We have contracts in Mid-State Health Network, Southwest, Southeast, Lakeshore, and the Northern Michigan Regional Entity. So
We represent about half of the CMHs throughout the state of Michigan, throughout the Lower Peninsula. At the moment, the only region that we're not representing in some way, shape, or form is the Upper Peninsula at this point in time. So, absolutely. So what I'd really like to do today is really to kind of walk you through a couple of things that have happened over the last few years, give you some statewide context of how that has happened, right, because of the perspective from across the state. So talk about it from a statewide perspective, but also then talk a little bit about what does that mean for Oakland, right? Because sometimes it can be helpful. Like, are some of the struggles that can be occurring, are these Oakland specific or are these statewide issues? So that's part of my goal today. So I'm really going to focus in four main areas. The first area that I want to focus on is the public health emergency, a little bit of how that has impacted funding across the state of Michigan and what that means as we step into a new fiscal year. The DCW mandate that has occurred and kind of some of the history behind how we got to where we are today and some of the new guidance that's come out from the state of Michigan within the last couple of weeks that make that again, something that the PIHPs are trying to deal with kind of in immediate fashion. Some discussion related to payment of providers, just in terms of kind of the provider network setup across the state of Michigan, and then, of course, obviously impact for Oakland in that area. And then finally, talk a little bit about the internal service fund, a sometimes unknown mechanism that's used for financing for the PIHPs throughout the state of Michigan. I'm going to try to be relatively quick in each of these areas, but please stop me or slow me down if you have specific questions, because it may be easier to answer the question kind of as we go through rather than waiting until the end. So with that being said, do you have any questions about myself or why I'm here tonight? All right. So first, let's talk about the public health emergency. As you all know, the public health emergency started in 2020. And what that really did for the PIHPs across the entire state of Michigan is it caused the state of Michigan, based on the federal rule, to start a period of what was called continuous enrollment. So what we were used to prior to 2020 was as eligibles came onto the program, they would come onto the program, and then there would be potentially certain circumstances where they would have to roll off the program. This was especially true in what we would call the Healthy Michigan program, or the Medicaid Expansion Program, as well as the TANF program, or the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, which, as you can see right in the name, is intended to be temporary, depending on the needs of the family. What we experienced as a system is when that continuous enrollment period started, what we used to see as a churn of individuals that were eligible. So some would come on and some would come off, became a stacking of eligibles throughout the course of a 3-year period from 2020 to 2023. That stacking of individuals that were not allowed to roll off of Medicaid ended up inflating the number of eligibles that we had across the state, not just Oakland, but in all PIHPs, we noticed this. As a result, at first, the state wasn't sure, is this going to last for 6 months or is this going to last for 9 months? There was not an understanding of how long this could last. But as this continued for a period of more than a year, the state actually took an approach to reduce the amount that they would pay per individual within the system to align with this expectation that the number of individuals would continue to inflate over a long period of time. Fast forward now to the end of the public health emergency. What the state is expecting is that between now and middle of next year, so approximately a 12-month period, the number of individuals that we gained from March of 2020 till about June of 2023, they're expecting we're going to lose anywhere from 70 to 80% of that growth. So just to clarify and make sure that it's clear, right, when we talk about losing 78 to 80%, we're not talking about losing 70 to 80% of all eligibles, just of the growth. So if we were at 100,000, let's say in 2020, and we added 10,000, which we know we added quite a few more than that, but if we added 10,000 in the last 3 years, then losing 70% of that 10,000 would be losing 7,000, or 7,000 out of that $110,000 total. What does that mean from a practical standpoint? For all of the PIHPs that I have been working with, this has been the most difficult budget year to predict ever, because we're basing our revenue on an unknown number of eligibles that may or may not exist next month, or the month after, or the month after that. So this is a real struggle in terms of trying to predict how many eligibles we're going to have and how much revenue we're going to have. So I just want to make that clear. That's not an Oakland specific issue, right? That is a statewide issue, and we do recognize that that becomes an issue that has to be dealt with, and realistically, in some instances, you try to balance that. How conservative is too conservative? How aggressive is too aggressive? Because at the end of the day, we still have to have enough money to serve the individuals as much as possible. We also need to continue to advocate at the state level for more money if there's not sufficient money, right? And that's really kind of where most, if not all, of the PIHPs are at, is we're trying to plan with the resources we think we're going to have for 2024 and advocate for more because we think we're going to need more. So that's kind of topic number one as it relates to the public health emergency and kind of stepping into the budget for 2024 and some of the uncertainty related to that budget. I don't know, Dana, if you have any additional thoughts on that particular topic or items you want to make sure we touch on.
Just briefly, I just wanted to add to that, and what Richard is saying is that we also had a number of different and new programming. So that would include the CCBHCs, the behavioral health homes, the SUD health homes, and the opiate health homes. So we began to serve more people during this time frame, and with those new programs means a new way of funding and paying for those services. So that's the other part of the challenge of managing those different funding sources.
Rich, I had a question on that topic.
Absolutely.
Okay, so based on what you said, we're facing an uncertain year. It started in June. It goes through this coming May, which is not exactly, but pretty close to halfway through our calendar year and 9 months through our fiscal year. After that, is it expected to sort of level off or get a little bit more stability?
So our hope, of course, is that it will be a little bit more stable after that period of time. The state has already delayed that at least twice. So originally they were hoping to start it in June. They've delayed it once till July. They had an issue with the CHAMPS program that delayed it again till August. And so the state is also trying to deal with all the volume of change that's happening right now. The hope is that by May, June of next year, that we will hopefully get to a better understanding of where that normal, I'm going to call it the new normal, might be from a level of eligibles and a level of funding. And of course, advocating for if we're seeing that the funding is not going to be sufficient to support the programming that's needed throughout the state of Michigan, that we're advocating for the state relook at those rates and add additional funding for it. Yes, absolutely.
Since you've got a really good statewide perspective, what are you seeing or hearing in terms of the eligibles actually getting through the system? I mean, I know what the state says, but I know what a dozen people have told me about their experience, and the two don't line up. You're across the entire Lower Peninsula. What are you seeing as far as how is this working, rolling out?
So I'm hearing similar stories from those that are categorically eligible, and there are ways that the state is able to identify and kind of push them through the eligibility program automatically, and so there is no paperwork to do, and they're becoming eligible again. To those that administratively then are have fallen off the program, and they're like, I don't even believe I was ever reached out to get an eligibility packet. Whether that, and I would say that, so there's the whole spectrum, I think, of experiences that are existing, and we're hearing that that's pretty consistent across the whole state, is that those experiences are not specific to one county or another county, but there's just a lot of redeterminations trying to happen all at the same time.
Okay, which I can appreciate the volume. So on the categorically eligible being pushed through, does the recipient know that? Or they just haven't been contacted and they hope all is well?
So my understanding, and I'm not into all the details, but my understanding is that the state is able to do some checks between income tax statements and be able to just say, yep, based on this data we were able to gather, we're just going to move them through the process. I don't know if they are sending notifications 100%. I can give you one example. I know that, so I have a child that's in the system from the foster care system. And we received a letter from no prompting of our own. We received a letter from the state saying, your child has been determined to be re-eligible. So I don't know if that experience is 100% across the board, that they receive a letter that, yep, that child is eligible, or you are eligible because we've determined that categorically and there's no additional paperwork for you, or if that just happens to be my experience.
Okay. Thanks for the perspective.
Yep.
I'm sorry. That's what John is saying, and we've gone through some experiences that all of a sudden I've had to start looking at process. And I don't know if the process is broken, or if the process is too complicated, or if there are too many steps in the process. And maybe you could, I mean, if in relation to this subject matter, do you see areas that maybe the process could be better explained and more simplified? Or are you saying there's so many bottlenecks that it's difficult to really get a better understanding, even just like you said with the note of the foster care? All of a sudden it just came without notification. But is there something we could look at in relation to process that would make it a lot easier for us to understand the results?
Yeah, so I'll talk at a kind of a statewide level of what my experience is. Many CMHs do employ a DHS worker, or sometimes considered a MARA worker, that assist through the process, especially for those individuals that the CMH serves. One of the things that is very difficult from a system perspective is that while we serve many of the eligibles within our community, we only typically serve a very small fraction of the total. So while we may be serving 20 or 30,000 individuals within Oakland's community, there may be 100,000 eligibles or more, right? So it's still a relatively small percentage. And so depending on the specifics, you know, there's a process that we do have control over, that Oakland has control over, and then there's the process that we don't have control over in terms of those individuals we're not touching. I think my experience is that the CMHs that I work with, you know, are very intentional of trying to help individuals get re-enrolled as best as they can. Every process, though, is a little bit different, right? I don't know Oakland's specific step-by-step process on how they assist. When I take a step back and look at the individuals we don't serve, or that the CMH may not touch, there are other community resources that the question is, how are they involved? Like, is there an FQHC? How is the FQHC involved? Are there other, how is the DHS offices involved in that outreach process? And that process does tend to look different from region to region throughout the state. It's not exactly one exact same process everywhere.
So, thank you. First, just a general comment. Being the treasurer of the organization and going through the budget process, and what you hit on, you know, gives me ulcers. I've never been in I used to be the mayor of Royal Oak, so I did 14 years of municipal budgets and never had quite this kind of challenge where you don't know when the bomb's going to drop. But what you're telling us is we're going to get rolled back to a base number of eligibles, but is that going to be late 2020 number, early 2021? Has the state said yet what they're going to do?
So the state themselves have admitted that they don't know what the number is going to end up being.
And that gives me that's two ulcers now. The people making you don't know what. Oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But yeah, so what they've done is they have looked at, and I say they, so MDHHS contracts with an actuarial firm, Milliman, who takes and looks at national data and tries to predict how many people do we think are going to be rolled off. So they think that approximately 70 to 80% of the rollback will happen from approximately March of 2020. So if we were to take March of 2020 data and today's data, and you roll back about 70 to 80%, that's the number they think we're all going to be at.
So we'll still be at a base number, hopefully. But then they're talking about that incremental difference when they were doing what's called the stacking. But the bottom line is, but let me go back one more point. So if we don't know exactly how we're gonna do it, then we wouldn't know, is it gonna be a percentage number statewide? Is it gonna be by region? You know, does Southeast Michigan, does their number different from the UP in terms of a percentage?
Yeah.
We don't know that yet.
So to give you your third ulcer, we do know it's going to be different by region. So what the state has said is on the statewide average, the way they set the rates, they're on the statewide average, they're assuming 70 to 80% rollback, but they know that certain areas of the state are going to get hit harder than that, and certain areas of the state are not going to get hit as hard. From my experience from the 2015-2016 timeframe, when the Healthy Michigan program really started ramping up, you could see that certain areas of the state, typically the more urban areas of the state, had a tendency to, I would say, churn a little bit faster in terms of getting individuals onto and then off of a program. Which means if that holds true, it's possible that the more urban areas of the state may have stacked a little bit higher, which means you might lose a little bit more on it than the average, the statewide average. So again, I'm looking into my crystal ball just like the state was looking into theirs and saying there could be areas of the state, Detroit, Oakland, Macomb, Genesee, Kent, Lansing, there could be certain areas of the state that actually lose more than what the state is predicting from a statewide average.
Well, look, I'm just gonna say this, I hate to say it, but those who have more to begin with usually have more at stake to lose, and we're the biggest one. So, you know, it doesn't take rocket scientists, and I certainly am that one, to figure out where the hit's gonna come, but, hopefully there'll be some positive news, you know, as we move forward and we get a little more structure to the process. But I hope everybody understands what this means is we're living in a budget world right now where an axe is going to fall. We don't know when, how much, or where, and it's very disconcerting to be in that kind of situation right now. And it's not our making, but we have to deal with whatever the fallout is going to be when it comes, and to try and prepare for it as best we can.
Yep.
So, okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
If I can give if I can try to appeal, I guess help a little bit. What I can tell you is there are now 10 with the new CFO that's added. There are 10 PIHP CFOs throughout the state of Michigan, right? That are looking at this every single month, and as we see the trends start to go down, right, in terms of the number of eligibles and the amount of revenue, we are already starting those conversations with the state to say, if this happens, then we're going to need more money. We're going to need you to adjust the rates, So while yes, the axe may fall, right, we're already looking at what are the things that we can do to mitigate that on a statewide basis as much as we can. So.
And I think that's important, to look at the what ifs and the impact. Mm-hmm. And so you're saying monthly, you're looking at that now?
Yep, so our first October payment, so the first PIHP payment for Medicaid and Healthy Michigan actually comes out next week. So we've been watching it in August and September. Those are the first 2 months from last fiscal year. We saw a little bit of a dip. September was a little bit more, right? We're expecting that's going to accelerate now in October. So we're keeping our eyes on that every single month to see where are we headed, and is it going to become a problem that we need to address with the state.
On your number of 70, 80%, as you're looking at this now monthly, are you able to assess that maybe it's only going to be 75% or whatever, based on what you're seeing? I don't know if there's some trending even at this short period of time, but that you could look at that and say, okay, look, this looks like where we're going to fall.
Yeah, so I would say the hope is that by either this October payment next week or the November payment towards the end of November, right, that would give us enough data points to do a real trend that wouldn't be, because of course the less data points you have, the more that an outlier can throw the trend significantly off. So our hope is that before Christmas, we'll have a better idea on trending. Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
That's what I was gonna
Sorry,
say.
I couldn't resist.
Get
Yeah,
ready for
okay.
it. Oh, boy.
Yeah, all right.
All right.
Bye.
Nasser Doldak, Chief Data Officer. In the same context, and the board asked to track these numbers, so we have a dashboard, and I'm looking at it right now. The three categories, the eligibility, not the payments, but it goes hand in hand. The three categories that Richard touched upon, which is DAP, TANF, and the Healthy Michigan. The DAP is kind of steady, but the Healthy Michigan and the TANF, I can see from July to September, we started to go down. Couple thousand here, couple thousand there, and it's trending down. Just wanted to let you know, and we can share this dashboard with you all, so you can track it on a monthly basis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the DCW topic. So as we're in this situation of the revenue uncertainty, which is a significant revenue uncertainty, we have the history of the DCW, and so I'm going to give again a little bit of that history. So in 2017, 2018, the state of Michigan put out their first DCW increase of 50 cents. The following year, in 2018-19, they put out another 25 cents. And then, as many may remember, when the pandemic hit, there was support for $2. That $2 soon became $2.25. Soon moved up to $2.35. And then, of course, with the latest 85 cents is, do my math, $3.20, right? So we're now at an original 75 cents that was pre-pandemic, and then there is the $3.20 that is post-pandemic. Recently there was an L letter that was put out by the state of Michigan that kind of put all of this together. Hey, you're required to pay this $3.20, but they ignored the 75 cents that were pre-pandemic, which is a little confusing because those did exist before March of 2020. So this L letter talks about how you have to pay more than you paid before that. So is that 75 cents included or is it not included? And then they also started talking about where in the past that $2.35 was supposed to be on only billable time, right? Now there's a policy that says it's on all time for a direct care worker, including administrative and indirect time, and now overtime. So they've added quite a bit into this L letter in terms of what they're asking and requiring. The problem that the PIHPs face currently is that while the L letter spells out a lot of these things, those things were not in the funding that Milliman gave us. So when Milliman set the rates for fiscal year 24, the rates that again are very uncertain, they didn't include overtime in those rates. They didn't include the 75 cents from 2018, 2019. So and again, this is a PIHP or statewide, all PIHPs are going through this right now, is an issue where while we have this uncertainty on the revenue side, there's a lot of pressure, right, to pay out the full DCW, even though we have not been funded for it yet. So that's something that we're all kind of seeking guidance from the state together. So just wanted you to be aware of that is a statewide issue. And again, all PIHP CFOs are working to get guidance from the state to say, hey, you put out this L letter that says this, but the actual money you gave us is this, and it's different, and it's not enough. So how are we gonna reconcile these two things? And so that's something that we're dealing with today, so everywhere. I know that one's a hot topic across the state. Any questions related to either the history or kind of some of the things that we're trying to do related to the DCW?
If we were able to give the full $3.27 or whatever it was that you just said, how much per hour would they be making?
So the state of Michigan does not define how much an employee should make. They just talk about how much funding they've put in, or they try to talk about how much funding they've put into the system. So that does lend to a level of ambiguity and a level of, I would say, different interpretation that's happened and implementation that's happened across the state. I know that some PIHPs interpret that very literally. So if the DCW increase, let's say, is the $3.20, and the Michigan minimum wage is $10.10, then that DCW wage would be the $14.30, whatever that differential would be. And so that would be the minimum that a provider would have to pay. Some have interpreted it very differently than that and says every individual employee throughout the system, whatever they were making, now they should get that much more over what they used to make. So there's a level of ambiguity in terms of the guidance that was provided, a level of ambiguity in the funding that has been provided, and therefore a level of inconsistency that it's been operationalized throughout the state of Michigan, unfortunately. All right. Third topic we want to talk about a little bit from a financing perspective is kind of provider network, and on a statewide basis in general. I've worked in a lot of PIHPs. Most PIHPs do manage their providers in accordance with their PIHP contract in a way that's a little bit different than Oakland has. So for most PIHPs, either through their CMHs, which are a level or a layer in between the PIHP and the consumer, there is a provider network, and it's a very straightforward rates times number of units equals how much revenue ends up being generated by the provider or expense that's paid by the PIHP. This gives those PIHPs a lot of, I would say, control in terms of the ability to manage certain aspects of their budget, because they can look at how much are we paying for a service and how much of each service are we authorizing. My experience with Oakland starts back in 2018, and so I've been with you in different capacities. It's changed a little bit over the last 5 years, but I have seen a little bit of the transformation from the old net cost contracts with the old core providers to the new service models, right? And so I think one of the things that's important to know is that all PIHPs are looking at the new CCBHC program that's come out, and what does that mean for the future? They're looking at value-based payment options, and what does that mean for the future? They're reevaluating how do we continue to live and manage within the funding uncertainty that we have, but really trying to focus on driving the outcomes of the care that's being provided, right? And so, kind of pulling that back into Oakland, I know that we're actively looking at what are the different options, what are the different mechanisms within, again, the uncertainty of the revenue, some of the mandates in terms of DCW and other mandates that the state puts on us to say, how do we then manage within that? And partnering with a provider network, partnering with the provider network to ensure that we're able to do that is going to be an important part of the next, I would say, 6 to 12 months as we try to navigate that. So I don't know, Dana, if you had anything else you wanted to add to that.
I think it's, thank you, Richard, for that, because it's critical in how we managing our funding sources, and looking at that and how we reimburse providers for services is going to be very critical. And so there are a couple of different models that we're looking at, and I think when we look at the last 3 years, and even before, there was some inconsistencies in application of some of the service models and how we collect the data to verify that the services that were paid for were actually provided. And not to say that they weren't, but really looking at outcomes and incentivizing for outcomes and not checking off boxes. So looking at models of care that really support our ability to manage care as opposed to pay for services or paid contracts and managed contracts. So that's a big push, and we're looking at the other thing I think is critical for our county, really specifically, is to standardize rates. So you've heard from several people talking about the differences in rates. So we're really needing to look at how we standardize the rate so the same service is paid out at the same amount depending on certain factors, like where the service is provided. Is it a home base or is it in a community-based service? And looking at how we look at the rates and apply them to what's being provided. We have a lot of core providers and other providers that have contracts with certain amounts, but we're often looking at provider stability payments and giving additional funds because their budget is not set up in a way that can support all of the work that they're doing. So that's going to be a critical piece in what we look at in the next 12 years. And no, I'm sorry, not 12 years, 12 months. And the other thing I'll add is when you look at SUD services and they're on a fee-for-service model, those providers work within their budgeted amounts, and they don't veer off too often. And when they do, we can really look at specifically, I think it was in 2020 and 2022 when we actually had to give provider stability or retention payments to 2 of our SUD providers. So that's the difference in how we manage care and manage those payments in our contracted provider network.
On that, would we have to take in consideration who is reimbursable and the criteria for that, that maybe there's some people that we're reimbursing that should not be, or maybe at the level they should, or maybe there's somebody we're not doing it that we should, as you look at these, this provider network?
Absolutely. Part of it is that making sure that provider credentialing is done, and that's how you make sure that the person providing the service has the correct licensing, education, experience, certification, or whatever that may be to provide that level of care. The other piece of it has to do with having the capacity, because we don't like waiting lists. And realistically, we have waiting lists for people because we don't have enough providers in our system to provide all the services that are needed. And so we look at who can provide those services. And even in the last year, we did an RFP. We added on additional providers for children because we only really had 2. And so even with adding on additional, I think 4 providers, they're still not up to capacity where they can actually provide those services. So we're almost always going to be behind until we can really stabilize our system or our network of providers and make sure that we're paying them in a way that they can do the work. Because our smaller providers are struggling the most, and we still get requests from our larger providers for stability payments. So we have to find some balance in standardizing the rate, but also making sure that our smaller providers continue be in business. Right. We need them.
Thank you.
All right, my last topic, which I know everyone's excited about, is the Internal Service Fund. So a little bit of the history behind the Internal Service Fund. So we have to rewind to 1998 when managed care really first became a thing, right? So what used to happen is the CMHs throughout the state of Michigan would actually bill the state of Michigan fee-for-service for all behavioral health services that were provided throughout the state. There was no managed care, there was no PIHP, right? The state said, yes, this person can get this service. The CMH provided the service and billed it to the state of Michigan. When managed care started, we as a system took on the public behavioral health system. We ended up taking on risk, right? We took on the risk that within any one given year, there may be more medical need than we had medical revenue, right? This is not an issue like, I'm going to contrast this to some governmental entities where it's like, well, if we don't have enough property tax revenue, then we're going to reduce services because, you know, we only have so much revenue. Under the Medicaid program, we are not allowed to do that. If a Medicaid eligible person walks in the door and has a medical necessity or a medical need for a specific service, we are mandated to provide it. It's not an if, it's not a if we have money, it's we must do that. We take on that risk as like any other insurance company does. But we now have to have a mechanism for managing that risk, because what happens in the years where the revenue, the Milliman rates that were set, when Milliman gets it wrong and we didn't get enough money, right? So the state set up the internal service fund. They said, this is going to be the mechanism. You can't have a fund balance. Medicaid still has to be Medicaid, but we're going to give you a mechanism to take in the good years, put some money aside, so that in the bad years you'll have the ability to manage the risk, right? They set up the internal service fund. And what they did is they said, you have a limit. You can only put up to 7.5% of your revenue every year into that internal service fund, right? Now contrast that with some of the GFOA, or the Government Finance Officers Associations. They actually have a recommendation for most governmental entities of what kind of fund balance, they use the term fund balance, what type of fund balance is considered healthy, right? And they usually recommend about 2 to 2.5 months worth of operations, or about 20% fund balance is the recommendation. 20% for Oakland would be close to, if not exceeding, $80 million. $400 million budget would mean an $80 million reserve. You can't keep that in fund balance. You're not allowed to because it's Medicaid, but you can keep it in an internal service fund. So all of this to say, in the history, all PIHPs have had experiences where you'll have a couple of bad years, you have to use ISF. You have good years, you have to put the money back in, because you know the next bad year is coming. It's going to happen. It's not a question of if, it's when. When is the next time going to happen? So I say all of that just to prepare you that as you look at your budgets, as you look at the potential for surpluses, you do have to say, what is the current status of our ISF? Do we need to consider contributing into the ISF, reestablish that risk reserve that we have available for the bad years in a potential good year? And I know that's a very hard conversation to have sometimes, is how do we balance between the future needs of the organization versus the right now needs of the organization, and know that both are important, right? Both are important. So again, it's just one of those things that all PIHPs are struggling with right now. They're in different phases. Like some years, one PIHP might have a bad year and have to use ISF, as you've experienced in the recent past, while other PIHPs are having a good year and they have to actually put money into the ISF. But it is something that everybody goes through. So again, it's a little bit of a complicated financing option that's available only to the PIHPs in the state of Michigan. There aren't any other governmental entities that have this available to them. So if there are any questions about that, I wanted to be available to try to answer those questions for the board today.
Am I able to ask, because I can't remember, what's the status of our ISF right now for OCHN?
It is currently empty.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask a question about the DCW too? I'm sorry, I was processing. So I just wanted to be really clear in my head. So the $1 that OCHN is taking back or ending for DCWs, is that because of the L letter you talked about and the incongruence with the funding provided by the state, or is there a separate issue there?
So my understanding, I'll talk at a very high level, my understanding is that some PIHPs, I think Oakland is one of them, some PIHPs decided to, in addition to the mandated DCW that's in the L letter, that at certain points in the past, Detroit Wayne did it once, I believe Oakland has done it, I don't know all the details personally for Oakland, there was discretionary additional pay that was provided over and above, right? And so my understanding is, right, what I think I understand is that $1 is over and above funding that was provided that was not part of the mandate. I don't know if that's...
Yeah, that's accurate. That was the one that went out in January of 2023.
Okay. So the $1 would be separate from or distinct from the L letter that was provided by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Sure, go ahead, John.
Just going back to the ISF, you said there was a 7% cap? Is that what you said?
You're only allowed to put in up to 7.5% of your current year premiums. So, for example, if if it was 100 million that you received in Medicaid revenue from the state of Michigan, you could put 7.5 million from that year in.
From that year?
Mhm.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And just to repeat, what we currently have in our ISF is 0?
That's correct.
So we have no reserves, essentially, for the Medicaid ISF.
That's correct.
Thank you. Other questions for Rich?
Thank you for letting me come and talk fun stuff with you guys tonight. If there are any other questions at any time, of course, Dana and Adam know how to get in touch with me. I'd be happy to have a conversation. So,
Thank you so much.
I do have one other question.
Okay.
What do we do about the ulcers now?
I'm a finance guy and not a medical guy, so sorry.
All right, we need a second to decompress from that. So the next item on the agenda is to take us over to board executive elections. So I'm going to start it off, and we have a whole process here. But before we get going on it, I wanted us to take a minute and have our Chief Compliance Officer explain a little bit about what this process is, if you don't mind, Bernard. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Bernard Hooper. I'm the Chief Corporate Compliance Officer. So everybody, just take 1 minute. Say, woosah. Okay? We're going to be fine. We're going to go through the voting process this evening. We're going to elect 4 new officers, so a chairman, a vice chairman, a secretary, and a treasurer. In addition to that, we will have individuals appointed to be the chairs of the standing committees. So that is the process that we will go through this evening. As it is stated in our bylaws, we will follow Robert's Rules of Order. In Robert's Rules of Order, for the appointment or the election of officers, we will take nominations from the floor, which means that all of the board members who are present and voting, and in this case, all 12 of you are present and voting, will be able to nominate an individual for each office. All of the individuals that are nominated will then be voted upon with respect to each office. So, for example, if for chairman, which we will start with as the first office, there are only 2 individuals nominated, then we will vote on those 2 individuals. Under Robert's Rules of Order, if there is a tie with respect to the vote on those 2 individuals, we will vote again with respect to those 2 individuals until one of those individuals receives a majority of the votes of the board. So that means the winner must receive at least 7 votes. Now, if there were 3 candidates and at the end of the first vote, none of those 3 received a majority of the votes, we would vote again. All 3 individuals would all 3 be in the second round of voting. And it would continue with that 3 individuals until one of those individuals receives 7 votes. Then we will elect a chairman. At that point, we will move on to the vice chairman, the secretary, and then the treasurer. Are there any questions regarding that?
I just wanted to clarify, so that if we had the 3, that doesn't mean someone gets 5 votes because they have a majority of over anyone else. They don't have a majority of the 12 members of the board voting, appointed and voting, or whatever it's called, voting and serving, whatever the term is.
Yes, so
Okay.
it actually
no
has
runoff.
to be the majority of members present and voting in order to be elected. Now, the example that is given in Robert's Rules of Order is if there are 3 individuals and perhaps the third individual only receives 2 votes out of the initial 12 votes, it is possible for members of the board to compromise and decide that the third person would be the better choice. That is why that third person would continue in the process. So there's going to be, if there is more than 2, or there will be a compromise process until we reach 7. If there are 2, there will still be a process until we reach 7. If there is only 1 person, that we will still have a vote. Now, it is not necessary for us to actually have a roll call vote. However, we can do so if we choose to. Now, the challenge with that is it takes longer to call everyone's name, and it is more difficult. We can just have people raise their hands, and we can count votes that way if we choose to. It is up to the board to decide that. At any time, anyone with respect to any office that we are voting for can request a roll call vote. It is up to you to decide that. All right? So I think that is a clear exposition of the rules of how we will conduct the election. And I think we are prepared at this time to proceed.
Thank you for that explanation and the examples. Any questions? All right. At this point, I am opening the floor and seeking nominations for the board chair. Who has a nomination? Adam.
Yes, I nominate Dennis Cowan for board chair.
Dennis, are you willing to serve if selected?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yvette.
I nominate Malkia Newman for chair.
Malkia, if you're elected, would you serve? Are there any other persons that would like to be placed in consideration or nominated for board chair? Hearing none, we'll close the nominations. Would either candidate like to make a public comment on why they should be the candidate? Malkia?
I did pass out my bio and my, so that people would know the leadership positions that I currently hold and the fact that I have experience in our system in leadership. And I think that that's important with all of the challenges that we're facing. I think sometimes people bring in their previous experience that doesn't apply to our situation, and it muddies the waters. So I'm soliciting the support of board members for chair.
Thank you. Dennis?
Thank you. In my 3 years, it has been a very eye-opening experience. My experience before was limited in that being the father of a Down syndrome son and living in a group home, I had that vision. The experience in the last 3 years has taken it to a whole different level, and then recognizing the needs of the 23,000 people we serve, as well as the partnerships we have with our providers. This particular past year has been a very interesting one in the treasurer position because we've had a lot of challenges. I feel we've met those challenges, and also being on the executive committee has been an additional benefit to me, and I feel prepared if chosen, and whoever the board decides to choose, I'm going to support and work with, but I look forward to working with all of you in that capacity or whatever capacity you choose. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this point, we'll vote for, okay, with two, how do we do this? Please, suggest.
So with the two individuals, the first name that will be called will be the first person who was nominated. Then the name of the second person will be called.
Okay, thank you. All right, all those that support Dennis for our new board chair, raise your hand. Count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. All those that are in support of Malkiah to be our new board chair, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, that is all 12, and we have a majority that would be Dennis. All right, congratulations. And with that, I have the honor, no matter which one of you would have won, the honor of actually passing the gavel. Because after 3 years and doing it in a cave and in a pandemic, I am ready to give this up. So thank you all for all of your help in doing this. But Dennis, this is now yours. You can just stay here.
Well, first I want to thank Jonathan for his leadership as our chair the past 3 years. It's been the time I've been here, and I've always felt welcomed, and he had the absolute correct vision for our board, and we'll try to continue with that. Someone once said to me, you might get what you want, and not that I'm certainly not unwilling, but I am here now and prepared to lead. And Malkiah, I want to thank you for running, and I look forward to continue working with you. So at this time now, we'll move on for nominations of
and
the
thank
board.
You.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. And now at this time, we'll move on to the next position on our board, which is the board vice chair, and nominations for that position.
Excuse me, may I add one thing?
Yes.
It is possible for you to nominate yourself for a position.
Okay. So, thank you. Okay. All right. So, that being said, is there anyone who wishes to make a nomination for the position of board vice chair? Pastor Jones. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Malkiah Newman for vice chair.
I
Dr.
was
Hans?
also going to nominate Ms. Newman for vice chair, and I would second that. Thank you.
So we have the nomination of Malkiah Newman for board vice chair. Is there any other nominations?
Yes, I would like to nominate John Young for vice chair.
First, I didn't ask the question, Malkiah, if elected, will you serve? Yes. Thank you. Mr. Young?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a nomination? There being no one, we'll close the nominations. So the two nominees are Malkiah Newman and John Young. Following the protocol pointed out by Mr. Hooper, I'll first call for a vote on Malkiah Newman. If everybody raise their hands. 8 for Malkiah, and for Mr. Young. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the votes are 4 in favor, 8-4 for Malkiah Newman as our board vice chair. Thank you.
Congratulations.
A spirited campaign, I might add. Yeah. Yes. At this time, we'll entertain nominations for secretary. Mr. Landsman.
I would like to nominate Adam Furman for secretary.
Adam, will you serve if elected?
I will.
Thank you. Are there any other nominees for secretary? There being no one, the nominations are closed. Because we only have one, I guess we'll do this by unanimous acclamation, but all those in favor of Mr. Furman? It's unanimous. Congratulations. All right, at this time, we'll entertain nominations for the Office of Treasurer.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Langston here.
Okay. If elected, will you serve?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone else willing to take on the position? I'm going to pass that torch over to you. Possibly, okay. But is there any other nominees for treasurer? There being none, we'll close the nominations. And again, this would be by unanimous acclamation. All those in favor of Mr. Landsman? The ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you.
At this time, we have, might just need a little bit of assistance on this, committee assignments. Is this the full committees? Yeah. Because, right. And the
Yes,
tradition
these
has
will be
been
the full committees.
The tradition has at least started with this past year is that the treasurer is the chair of the finance committee.
Yes, that is correct.
Right. So,
So we will
Excuse me.
need a policy management committee.
I just want to point out that as the prior chair, I was on neither committee.
right,
Now you are a chair, so you're no longer on finance.
right.
So there's a couple of options that we've done in the past. One is we can shuffle who's on whichever committees they want, or I could, if someone has a desire to move to policy, or if someone has a desire to move to finance, and then I'm willing to go to which, well, I don't have a choice, now I'm on finance.
Right, you have to go to finance, yeah.
But this is probably the time for folks, if they want to shuffle, to say, I've been on policy, I'd like to be on finance, or I've been on finance, and I'd like to be on policy. This is the time to do it,
Okay.
because policy still has to elect their chair, first
Right.
of all. And there's a lot to do on policy, there's a lot to do on finance.
So, I guess I'll ask first if, who is interested in either staying on finance or being on the finance committee? Jones?
Pardon me, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we choose who is going to be the head of the policy committee first?
Well, I thought we'd have to pick the members first in order to have the vote.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking about. So, well, yeah. So, you're still interested in being on finance? Okay. Pastor Jones, Adam? You want to go to policy? Okay. I didn't mean to, we're kind of doing it haphazard, but that's fine. We'll get there. I guess I'll just, Malchiah, policy still? Okay. Chris, policy? Sarah? Policy? Okay.
If John Paul wants to go to policy.
He wanted to go to policy.
Then we need someone from policy to come to finance.
Yeah.
Use that help.
You're still in policy? Policy. We're gonna have to have a runoff here. Dr. Giles? You are a lifesaver. You get today's life-saving award. Okay. So that gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 6 on policy and 5 on finance. So that, I think, that would be Jones, Young, Dr. Giles, and Adam Furman, and John on the finance committee, and then Malchiah, Christina, Sarah, Dr. Hans, Yvette, and John Paul on policy. So I don't believe we have to vote. I'll just, does the chair make those assignments?
The bylaws states that there is a process for how the selection of the policy chair is to be done.
Okay.
So,
So now, does the, policy, go ahead.
that would be correct.
Okay, so we'll move forward then. Those members of the policy committee can make a nomination for the chair. Malchiah.
I'd like to nominate Dr. Hahn for chair.
Okay. Okay.
I'd like to nominate Christina Root for policy chair.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for head of policy? Okay.
I'd like to nominate Yvette for policy chair.
Okay. If elected, will you serve? Okay. So we have, two nominees for the policy chair, from the 6 members. Is there any other nominations? There being none, we'll close the nominations and we'll have a vote of the policy, committee members only. First, for Ms. Root. Hold on, hold on. Okay, hold on. Before there's a vote, we'll. Okay.
Hi, this is Sheila. Can I just make a comment?
Okay.
Sheila, could you please read the paragraph regarding the policy management committee, the chairman?
Yeah, and I just, before I read that, I also want to note that the policy chair will also serve on the executive committee.
Okay. But we can go forward with the vote.
She has to read the statement first. I wanted to make sure of one thing. So it is going to be the majority vote of the members of the policy management committee that will select the chairman, correct?
That is.
Thank you.
Okay. So, first we'll have a vote, for the first nominee, which was Ms. Root. So anyone who's in support of, Ms. Root, would you raise your hand? 1, 2,
Raise your hand.
3.
She can raise.
Are you raising your hand? Okay, well, we have, okay, 3 or 2? 2. 3 hands up, okay, and then for, Ms. Woodruff, our second nominee. It's, okay, so we have a 3-3 tie.
We will vote again.
Okay.
Unless one of the candidates wishes to withdraw.
Okay, so we have a 3-3 tie, and we'll have a second vote. While I ask this, I want to ask one question. Mr. Roberts was voted. Both nominees want to go to the second round?
I have a question.
Yeah.
In the bylaws, so I'm just reading it here. It says the board chairperson Policy Management Committee. The Policy Management Committee shall consist of 6 members of the board. The board chairperson shall solicit members to participate in the committee and confirm by a vote of the full board at the October meeting. So it is the policy committee,
Right.
correct, that does do it, not the full board?
Right, and that's full,
Right.
the board, the
Okay.
policy board, yes.
I just want, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, so,
What we failed to do is, as a board, approve the policy committee as it stands and approve the finance committee as
Right.
it stands, if that's what's in the bylaws.
Right, we can do that after we
Right,
select the.
right, okay. So, again, for, Ms. Root, the second round voting. 1, 2, 3, okay. And then, for, Ms. Woodruff, we have 1, 2, 3, okay, so it's tied again, so we go to round 3. You're gonna withdraw? Okay, so been a withdrawal, so do we have a unanimous acclamation, from the, board for Yvette? Okay? All right, there being everyone, okay.
Now board ratification of both
Okay.
committees.
So now we'll need, board ratification of the committee assignments on finance and policy management, as I had previously stated.
I'll make that motion.
Support?
Motion and support. Is there any discussion? Everybody's happy with their assignments? Good. Do we need a roll call vote on this, or can we still go by hands?
If you have asked for a roll call vote, which you did, we can do that.
All right. We'll have one roll call vote. Yeah.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Cullen?
Yes.
Mr. Torres?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Hans?
Yes.
Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Ms. Root? Ms. May?
Yes.
Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Mr. Lansman?
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you very much. Unanimous approval of the committee assignments.
We don't have a process for selection of vice chairs in the bylaws.
We'll defer, why don't we defer that to, well,
To,
Do we vote at this
I was gonna-
meeting last year?
to
Sheila, did we,
sorry. To clarify, we do have a vice chair, in the bylaws. I send it to Kara. I don't know if she wants to share it with you, the language, because I can't share
okay, thank
because
you.
of the thing. Yep. Send her.
Okay. So the finance committee has to vote for that vice chair. Okay. So finance committee, you have to vote one more time for a vice chair.
and we need a vice chair for policy.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so nominations now for, vice chair of the finance committee. And this will be voted on just by the finance committee. Is there anyone who has nomination?
I would like to nominate, John Young.
You will serve. Any other nominations? There being no one, the nominations are closed, and by unanimous acclamation, the finance committee for Mr. Young.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
All right, John, thank you. And for the Policy Management Committee, do we have any nominations? Yes.
I'd like to nominate Ms. Root.
Will you serve? Thank you. Are there any other nominations? There being none, the nominations for the Vice Chair of Policy Committee are closed, and unanimous acclamation for Ms. Root by the committee. Thank you. All right, so that rounds out our assignments and team, and I believe by the election we've had, we've rounded out the next item on the agenda, which is the Board Executive Committee, which is the board chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, and the head of policy management. So,
Now, there is also referred to in the bylaws an executive director performance review committee. However, we select that typically later in the year. And that usually has a chairman and a vice chairman.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the last.
So there is an executive director performance review committee. However, we typically have selected that later in the year.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we don't have to do that.
I have no problem with deferring that decision to a later date.
No.
Normally it's the executive committee that serves on
That,
evaluation committee.
right, right. But we can defer that to a later meeting. Now we have the liaison assignments. First we have now is this an elected position or is this a volunteer? These are typically volunteer positions.
Typically, what we've done is we've got people that liaison, we ask if they want to continue. If they don't, we look for a volunteer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Malkiah? Yeah. I'm looking at Malkiah because she has even more history than I do here.
Okay. So, our RRAC liaison,
That's the Thursday of the first Thursday of the month. You're currently that.
is there, Dr. Hans, you're willing to serve again? Okay. I don't see any interest, so you can continue as you've done a fine job, and I think everybody acknowledges that as the RRAC liaison. Our CAC liaison. Right. You'd be interested in that? Okay.
And that one is when, Malkiah? But it's a morning meeting on Wednesday.
Hybrid meeting, 9:30 here tomorrow. In person or online.
All right, is there anyone else interested? Christina, the job is yours. And finally, we have, our oversight policy liaison. Sarah, you willing to serve, continue serving? Okay, anyone else interested? There being no one, then, Sarah will have you continue. So we've rounded out, all the different positions. I want to congratulate everybody. It's a active board. I want to thank everybody for their patience. We have a new set of bylaws, so we were painstakingly trying to make sure we were consistent with those bylaws that we adopted last year. So we'll move on with our the rest of our meeting. Mr. Hooper, thank you very much for your guidance. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
The remainder of the agenda, first we have some reports. I think those, we had prior positions, so we'll just stick with that. The Finance Committee reported out at our Committee of the Whole on several contracts which are listed. We made recommendations of approval on all of those. So we'll defer action on our next set of board approval items for those contracts. Jonathan, anything on the executive level?
Just a reminder that this coming weekend, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we have the fall conference up in Traverse City. I don't recall who all is going to that. You're going, Dennis. I'm going. Dana, you're going. Malkai, you're going. Dr. Giles. Okay, great. And those are our voting delegates for the Sunday meeting as well. That's been sent up to the association. Because without them having that list, they won't let us vote. So please send that up to, I don't remember who it is that has to get it, but.
This is Sheila. That
Sheila
is
knows.
correct. It's been sent to Francis.
Okay. And for those of you going up, don't forget that those meetings start at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, if you're not there for earlier business. Dana, were you going to do something on Monday night?
Yeah, I believe we have reservations for Monday night. That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, the reservations are for 6:45, and we sent a calendar invite via Boardable, just so all the information was there. If you guys need it any other way, let me know. I also sent a calendar invite via the regular OCHN email address too, but it went out to both.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thank
And
you.
I won't have to report out on that, but I'll have to report out on finance next.
That's right.
Okay, harder.
Next, the Policy Management Committee Chair Report, Malkiah.
For the policy portion of the COW meeting, a strategic plan update of the 3-year substance use disorder strategic plan was provided for us by Ms. Megan Phillips. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. The next item we have is we're on to our board approval items. The first matter we have for voting is our 2024 board calendar. That has been circulated at the COW meeting. Everyone had an opportunity to look at it. We have each month a scheduled committee of the whole meeting, then a board meeting, and then a study session. Sometimes those are combined with our tri-county meetings at the study session, but in any event, do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
To adopt? Motion? Support?
Support.
And a support? Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Can you repeat who?
Oh,
Mr.
Mr. Young, and then Ms. May was the support.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Torres? Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Hans? Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Ms. Root? Ms. May?
Yes.
Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Mr. Lansman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. The motion passes. Now we have our recipients, right, RAC recommendation. Vicki, welcome.
Good evening. Per our policy, individuals, members of the RAC committee can serve 2 consecutive terms. Elizabeth Martin has completed her first term, or will be completing her first term in November. I see I have a little typo on the memo. You did approve her appointment in November of 2020. The RAC committee did discuss her reappointment and unanimously would like to have her reappointed. She's been an active member of the RAC committee, regularly attends and shares her opinions and thoughts, and so the RAC committee would like to have her reappointed.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? There being
Move
none,
for approval.
a motion by Mr. Young, supported by Ms. Root. Is there any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Torres? Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Hans? Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Ms. Root? Ms. May? Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Mr. Lansman?
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The motion passes, or motion, yes. The first item we have is the Relias contract. I guess, doesn't look like there's anybody.
I'm online.
What's that? Do we have somebody? Oh, yes.
Yeah, I think Nasser is there.
Thank you for
also.
bailing me out here. I was wondering who was going to talk
Yes.
about the
Nasser Dot,
contract.
Chief Data Officer. So, just to keep everyone in the loop, we spoke about that in the previous meeting. We are required to generate reports called the HEDIS measures. It's an outcome measures created by NCQA. The current vendor, Relias, was not NCQA accredited, so we seeked another vendor called Vital Data Technologies. What we are asking for here to extend the Relias because the HEDIS measures run on a calendar year. So we want to extend until the end of the year
Right.
so we can have a full set of reports from this vendor before we migrate to the new one, which is already in the work right now. But again, we want on this logic to have a full set of data for a full year.
Yes.
That's why we're asking for the 3 month extension.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions? And this was recommended by the Finance Committee for approval.
Move for approval.
A motion by Mr. Young,
Support.
support by Pastor Jones. Any discussion? There being none, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
John Paul? Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Hans? Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Ms. Root?
Yes.
Ms. May?
Yes.
Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Mr. Lansman?
Thank you. The motion passes. Next is the Jefferson Wells contract, which also is a contract extension for medication verification audits for compliance. We did have Ms. Massey made a presentation on this. I think the board's been apprised, and this has been recommended for approval by the Finance Committee.
Move for approval.
Motion by Mr. Young, support by Ms. Newman. Is there any discussion? There being none, roll call vote, please.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Hans? Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Ms. Root? Ms. May? Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Mr. Lansman? Carried.
Thank you. The motion passes. Next is our PIHP contract amendment, which actually was not, as I recall, a financial change in this significant contract, but it was a change in disclosure of our program director for behavioral health capitation rate certification is now Kirsten Jordan. So we need to approve that to amend the contract.
Move for approval.
A motion by Mr. Young, supported. Support by Ms. Newman. Is there any discussion? There being none, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Hans? Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Ms. Root? Ms. May? Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Mr. Lansman?
Thank you. The motion passes. Just for those watching who are in attendance or listening, we have a meeting last week, the Committee of the Whole, where we go over all these in a little bit more detail. So there's a lot more questions at that time, and it prepares us to be able to vote as we have done so today. So we'll move on with the consent agenda. We have a number of board minutes and committee meeting minutes, which need approval.
Move for approval.
Support.
A motion by Mr. Young, supported by Pastor Jones. Is there any, not a discussion on consent agenda items? We'll go right to a roll call vote.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Hans? Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Ms. Root? Ms. May? Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Dr. Giles?
Yes.
Carries.
Thank you. The motion carries. That concludes the business portion and voting portion of our meeting. Is there any other business that is to be brought this evening? Anything, Dana, from? No other matters that?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. We now have board reports for the Recipient Rights Advisory Committee. Dr. Hans? Oh, thank you. We'll defer to
All right.
Ms. Woodruff. Yes.
I attended the meeting I'm Yvette Woodruff, and I attended the meeting in Dr. Hahn's absence on October the 5th. I don't know how detailed you want me to be. The meeting was called to order at 4 o'clock. There was a quorum in place. There was no public comment at the beginning. The approval of the minutes, they were approved. All were in favor, none were opposed. The motion carried. We reviewed the minutes from September the 7th. Donna Lowe made a motion to approve. The motion was supported by another member. All were in favor. The motion carried. They welcomed the new RRAC board member. Ursula Bolton introduced herself to the group. And they do what they call a welcome. Members get to know each other. The Rights Department introduced Dennis Goodman, who works part-time in that department. He's not an investigator. He serves as a support specialist. He discussed his tasks and responsibilities. They reviewed the goals and objectives for the funding year of 22-23. Vicki Suter discussed the 3 goals that were set and the objectives that went with them. All of the goals were accomplished during the fiscal year. They're going to do some carryovers of those goals. They discussed funding year 23-24 goal recommendations. The previous goals will be put back as goals for the coming year. They're going to be ongoing goals, and they're going to discuss some additional goals. It was noted by that committee that none of our board study sessions were related to recipient rights, and that they're hoping that it will be included this coming year. There was an overview of the ORR conference from Vicki Suter and Angie O'Dowd. They talked about the 300 that participated in the conference and the legislative overview. They discussed a roundtable that was hosted by the CMH, and they discussed the state hospitals, Carroll and Hawthorne, which is currently being torn down and being rebuilt. And they discussed who had authority for the psychiatric hospital assessment, that it should be the department rather than the county. And they talked about the expansion of the CCBHCs and the new Bureau for Youth that's being established. And they discussed the importance of knowing your agency's mission and vision. And the rights update, they've hired a new rights specialist, which now brings the staff total to 10. They talked about the training of building blocks, getting all people on the same page with the mental health code, Chapter 7, and the appreciation luncheon that will be held on October 25th. Vicki presented the site review reports were 79% of completion rate. The board then went into closed session to discuss reappointment, and they, in coming back into the open session, a recommendation was made to take Elizabeth Martin's name and move it to the board of directors for tonight. Again, there was no public comment, and the meeting adjourned at 5:25. Respectfully submitted.
Thank you for that thorough report. No, really, I
Well,
appreciate that.
I didn't know if I should be brief or
No,
exactly what.
I think that's good. It was excellent. Thank you. Now the Citizens Advisory Committee, no report. And Sarah, I know you had a meeting, so yeah. And thank you for carrying the water for us on the financial end of things.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
Especially since I'm on policy, not finance.
Oh, yeah. Right.
The Oversight Policy Board had a special meeting in person on September 27th at 4 p.m. And it was basically all budget all the time. Lots of discussing different motions and approvals that the board needed in order to approve our budget for the 2023 and 2024. There was a motion to approve budget ratification for 2023, which passed. A motion there was a request for PA2 funding to be, so a motion to approve reallocation of $12 million of SUD Medicaid and Healthy Michigan funding to the PA2 funds for fiscal year 2023. And that was approved. A motion to approve fiscal year 2024 budget recommendations, which was approved.
the approval of the fiscal year '24 PA2 budget and the fiscal year '24 budget as a whole was approved also. So it was successful. Glad we finally got to have the meeting because it kept getting moved around. And that was it.
Thank you very much. That was a busy meeting. You had a big agenda. I saw it. So thank you very much for taking care of those things and for your board too. At this time, board reports are completed and we have a second opportunity for public comment. Do we have anyone who's online?
No, we do not.
Okay. Do we have anyone who to speak? Yes.
Hi, thanks again. Zach Cardinal from Easter Seals Mork, the ARC of Michigan, and New Gateway's Board of Directors, and the Oakland County Oakland County Health Network, CAC. I just want to quickly spotlight and highlight Diane Sansalone, who is also a CAC member. For the month of August, was announced to be Expert Care's Employee of the Month. So she both receives services and provides services as DCW or DSP. So I just wanted to highlight that for all of you in case you missed that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. There being no one else for public comment, we will close public comment. And at this time, we'll have our director's report. Dana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good evening again. And I just want to thank this board for the opportunity to serve, hopefully in another 5 years, to this community in which I live and love, and I love the work that we do, and I'm very proud of the team that we have here. And I know for a fact we're going to continue to do great things despite some of our budget challenges. We will continue to do what's right for people we serve. So with my report, I'll do the brief version because I know with time I want to be respectful of individuals' time. Just to highlight overview over this month was National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and so we highlighted that. We also wanted to address Breast Cancer Awareness Month by providing mental health resources and information to the community, and we did that. The other thing that we're doing and working on is our collaborations are very critical to our work, and also advocating for change. And additional funding is one way, but also expansion of services. So we had several requests to actually tour our Youth and Family Care Connection Center, as well as meeting with the state's new contract managers that actually came here on a Friday, and the team was able to talk about some of the programs and initiatives that we have, as well as some of the struggles we have in advocating for always getting increased funding and support for what we do. And so great relationship building opportunity. I know we're being heard, but we have to continue to push the message about filling in gaps in care. The other thing I wanted to cover is that on several occasions we're being asked by Board of Commissioners to come and talk about the programs. And just this month we're going to do a presentation on our justice initiatives, which I'm very proud to say that justice team has grown, probably doubled. And then the work that they're doing is just phenomenal, not just here locally, but also statewide and nationally. So it's being recognized for the great work that we're doing in terms of training law enforcement officers, expanding hopefully our co-responder programs, and that is the mental health professionals that ride along with the police officers, as well as other training to the community to help support individuals in need. And part of that is building a continuum of care. So we're placing programs in where we have gaps in services and care. So we don't want people to need full-blown crisis services. We want them to be there when they need them, but we also want to have ways that we can prevent and intervene prior to someone having a full-blown crisis. So when we look at our access issues, for example, we know we're screening people every single day, but also we're expanding the access and where people can get connected to services. One of the challenges on the statewide is also we're seeing more of a greater need. So as our numbers, we see some of them reducing in terms of those eligibles that we talked about earlier. Healthy Michigan numbers are decreasing. We really know, if you look at the number of people that are knocking on our door for help and services, the need is greater, and the severity and the level of support that people need has also grown, not just for our community, but across the state. We're consistently hearing that. So we have plans to make sure that we're, again, filling in those gaps, but also how do we make sure that people are being seen and they can be heard when they knock on our door. So that's very critical, and looking at alternatives to, or not even alternatives, I'll say additional funding sources. So part of what doing that is talking to people about the work and the need. So one of the things that we're also doing is our partnership with the American Psychiatric Association Foundation. We're looking at other opportunities that they will provide resources so we can have, like the diversity fellows, expand on some of the anti-stigma work that we're doing, but also expand on how do we support mental health employees or staff or team members that also need that support. One of the things that was highlighted is the number of individuals who are actually providing mental health supports and behavioral health supports that need support themselves. And there's even a greater stigma there when you talk about individuals who seek services. So those are some of the initiatives, and I'm glad when I go to these different programs and conferences and meetings is that our strategic objectives align with those at the state and at the national level. So I think that's critical in terms of reporting. So I'll move down very quickly. Again, I want to save time as much as possible, but I do want to highlight something that is critical. And hopefully you'll read my report. Please feel free, open door, ask questions, reach out to me outside of this meeting. I'm always open to that. But I want to call your attention to the state psychiatric hospitals. And part of calling your attention to that is that there is a bed shortage, and there are many people waiting to go to state hospital. Sad to say, but there is definitely a need. And I think most of you may be aware that the Children's Hawthorne Center has shut down they're going to level it out and then build a new facility there. So there are 30 beds at Walter Reuther. So 30 beds for children in need of state hospital services, which means that there are not enough beds. So we have a lot of children in the community utilizing community-based services if they can access those services. So we want to do a lot of the preventive work and make sure that we're supporting families so that our youth are not waiting to receive services. So that's why we have the YFCC. And in fact, we actually need more YFCCs, and we need, sad to say, but we do. But on the flip side, I want to leave on a positive note. Out of all of the beds in the state, we actually don't have anybody waiting for a state hospital bed. I think maybe one or two. But also, if you look at the number of individuals who are in state hospital facilities right now, there's 56 people right now out of 630 beds. So I think that says a lot about the quality of work we're doing in the community to keep people out of state hospital, but also to find alternatives to that level of care. So I just want to compliment our provider network because they're a critical piece of that in terms of making sure that people are getting the care that they need. And they're struggling because, like I said, they don't always have the staffing and they don't always have the capacity. But the number one thing we can't do is to turn people away. So we have to figure out how do we work outside or how do we work within the challenges we know we face. I hear what people are saying about the dollar, and we are continuing to look. If you ask my team, I'm continuing to put that pressure on to see if at all how we can make some of that work again. And it's not our desire to take money away. Nobody wants to take funding away from any program that is actually very much needed, but we have to find the resources to do that. And so we're committed. Our team is very committed to doing that. So I know our finance team is just like, they don't want to answer my call, or, we're constantly meeting. Adam and I are constantly meeting with the team to see how can we address this issue, because we know that without our DSPs, our direct service professionals, and our direct care workers, we would not be able to do any of this work. So with that, I will end, and thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you very much for your report, and I think I speak for the board when I say we look forward to working with you for the next 5 years. And the team, at this time, we have an opportunity for board member comments. I'll start with Malkiah. We'll work around this way.
I just want to thank everyone that supported me for vice chair, and I hope to do you proud. Thank you.
I'd like to comment my support for reestablishing that dollar with direct support professionals. We know that this is going to hurt areas like mine the most. We already have a huge lack of direct support professionals in the industry. Now we're going to take $1 away that we used to incentivize people to get in and stay in this profession. And I feel like my district, White Lake, Highland, Milford, the more rural areas of Oakland County are already underserved in Oakland County, and this is going to make it worse. As a parent of a 19-year-old who has cerebral palsy, schizencephaly, and hydrocephalus, we have watched our respite hours get cut year after year after year. And she's been approved for community living supports for 10 years without ever getting a worker, not once. So I just want to comment in my support for direct service providers, and I just want to thank them for everything they do. Thank you guys for coming tonight.
Tough act to follow, but I agree with you. Just some perspective, we used to live in a different county. Joe had twice the hours approved in another county that year. So it is very real, it's challenging. As a board member, we hear you, whether it's in this meeting or in the grocery store or wherever we get approached. And I think we've got to keep the pressure on all levels of government too. Read the headlines in terms of what we're doing for EV to save ourselves 50 years from now. This is today. So related to that, Dana and Adam, my favorite topic, transportation. So there are more vehicles that have been purchased. I hear there are fewer drivers, kind of back to the same issue. So we've got a lot of gaps that I think we're going to need to work. Unfortunately, we heard Richard's report, which was very good, very comprehensive, but shows the strain across. And I think that that's going to be the challenge, going forward on all levels. And I was on a advocacy call for a statewide organization, and I think something we're going to have to look at again is, providing creative supports for families for care. Feels like the 1930s rather than heading to the 2030s, but it's stretched. If you have family that can step in, you're okay. If you move into this area and you have no family, the waiting list is incredible. And last, I'll end on a little more positive note. Congratulations to Malkiah for her victory in a spirited campaign for vice chair. I love you too.
Pastor Jones.
Let me echo our concern, and I hope that we could find some solution. It may seem like it's not much to Donna, but it is. It definitely is for the work that you all do, and we really need to make sure that somehow or another we find the dollars, the means to be able to support the excellent work that you all are doing. From the first time we heard it, I said to the committee, is there some way? Is there some way? So hopefully we can find that, and I think that there has to be a way. It has to be a way. Second, I want to thank the staff for everything that they do. I looked at numbers that the director's given, and think of what work that each one of you are doing. And I want to say the overwork, underwork, around work, and everything else, weekends, weekdays, and everything. Thank you, because you all are what make Oakland County Health Network what it is. And so, thank you so very, very much. I'm excited about being on this team. I'm making some new friends, and I'm pretty excited about it. And I know that we'll be even better next year than we were. And I don't know if our director made a slip of the tongue. She said 12 years, so I guess we'll try to see what happens, huh? But listen, thanks for everything, and thanks for what everybody's doing. Thank you.
Jonathan?
All right, first, thank you guys for all of your support over the past 3 years and your continued support as I try the treasurer's hat out, and see if we can't, I know it'll be a tough thing, and I might get a boo here or there, but we've got to find a way to increase our reserves, our ISVs, so that we can weather the storm. And not because we want to prevent the money from getting to our direct providers. I don't think that's the answer, but we just know that we are much more agile than the state is. And they're still thinking about what they may do. They're still thinking about how they might change their rates. They've got Millman insights, Millman's numbers, and they don't know what's going to happen. We're already well on our way to knowing how bad this year is going to be. And with zero money in reserves right now, it's going to be hard to reach in there and help maintain and sustain all of our providers, and we need to. And that's going to be an interesting a challenge. Way back when, I was raised in a variety of different provider settings where their focus in the, at least in the Catholic hospitals, was no money, no mission. And I hope to God that doesn't happen to us where, you know, we don't have the means to be able to forward our mission, which is to serve those who can't help themselves. I mean, that is our job. And as you heard from Rich, we can't turn anyone down. So we will have to find a way to make that happen. And hopefully the state will come through. But my experience with this state is don't hold your breath. We have to advocate like crazy. And we'll all have to do that advocation this year if we're going to look for better rates or some more stability dollars, et cetera, from us, and for the trickle-down effect down to core and to direct providers. It's just what we're going to have to do this year. All right, thank you.
Dr. Hans?
Well, I just want to say to Jonathan, that's why we elected you as the treasurer unanimously. So, yeah, keep up the good work, keep everybody on their toes. But I think most important thing is advocacy. We have to take every opportunity to speak on behalf of the people we serve. We heard stories from the providers, how they are struggling, and the direct care professionals as well. So on a positive note, I think we have elected good leadership on our board, especially Ms. Newman. She has always been very vocal ever since I joined this board about 12, 13 years ago. I'm really impressed, and I will support you, help you in any way that you ask me to. Thank you.
Ms. Woodruff?
I just want to say I appreciate the presentation tonight from Richard Carpenter. It gave me a much clearer understanding of what's going on across the state. And hopefully by the end of November, we will see some trends and patterns so that we can make informed decisions. We can't make emotional decisions as much as we want to because you can't give what you don't have. And I appreciate the vote of confidence for the policy chair. Thank you.
Dr. Giles?
I'd just like to echo my support, of course, of finding that dollar or funds for the foundation, those individuals that work directly with the person served. So definitely want to echo my support there. I want to go back and thank, I know I'm going to mess up his name, I hope not, but Ben Rapajay.
Oh,
Rapajay, I
well,
got it
wonderful.
right, all right. For just sharing his successes and his aspirations. I really appreciate it, the opportunity to hear him share that with us. And then, of course, thank Richard Carpenter for just providing the insight, making it more understandable for many of us. And then congratulations to everyone on their new leadership positions. I look forward to working with you all. That's it.
Adam?
Thank you for your vote of confidence, and for another year of being your secretary. Again, I'd like to echo people's comments. The presentation by Richard Carpenter tonight was very enlightening and very easy to understand. Very much appreciated. Just it was great hearing Ben's story as well, and congratulations to everyone who was elected tonight. And again, congratulations to Dana. Looking forward to working with you for another 5 years. Have a good night.
Thank you. A couple comments just on a housekeeping matter for the members of the executive board. We do have a meeting before our upcoming study session next week, so I'll just ask if our able staff could make sure that everybody gets notice of that meeting so that nobody misses that on their calendar, because we all have now new meetings and new times and new things to do. For my part, this evening, I want to thank the board. A lot of work was accomplished tonight with the elections, as well as, I think, not to be lost in that is the approval of your contract, Dana, and continue to working with you. And I want to thank the board for making me the chairman. But the reality is we have 12 leaders here, and we've been chosen by this county, largest county in the state, to be the leadership. So whether there's an elected position you have or not, that's immaterial. We're the 12 leaders that, as has been echoed here tonight, have to be the advocates. Tonight, I have to tell you, it felt like a little like, remember they talk about the sandwich generation? So we heard from our providers, but we also heard the sobering news from the top with the unfunded mandates that we have to deal with. So somehow that is going to shake out. But what's important to me is that I listen to your priorities, we put those priorities together, and we try to take as much action as we can on those priorities. Because there's a lot of energy at this table, and my goal is to help tap all that energy. That may not be good for Dana and the staff, having all that energy, but it's here. We do have several new members, but you've stepped up to the plate pretty quickly here. I've been very impressed with all the people who've been brought on in the last year or two. So I at one point I was a rookie, but now I'm looking over my shoulder. But we have a good team here, but we have a great job to do that we've been entrusted with. So on that note, I do want to give Dr. Hans credit for this, and I will bring this up at the executive committee meeting. But she mentioned that we need to have a board retreat. We've had a lot of new people come on. We don't know one another. We don't have an opportunity to get to know one another as much and maybe talk about those priorities. So it may not be something we are able to do till January, and maybe it's a half-day thing, but we'll start to find out what works for everybody, because I know everybody's got jobs or they've got obligations and responsibilities with either their children or parents or whatever, so we'll try and work through all that. Some people have weekend responsibilities, Pastor Jones, I know. So with that all being said, a good job by all tonight, and thank you very much to our staff. People don't realize how much work it takes to get everything put before us in a manner and a responsible manner that we can vote on and move this organization forward. So thank you very much, and we look forward to leading you at least for the next year. So thank you very much, and at this time, motion to adjourn? So moved, supported? I know there's no discussion. We stand adjourned.